My pleasure to welcome you to this Call to Europe conference. My name is Max Brendler. I'm director of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung office in Warsaw. This is the German political foundation affiliated with the Social Democrats, and we've been here in Warsaw for 35 years, and we have been a partner with Amicus Europae Foundation for a long time and also with FEPS. So I would also like to take the opportunity to thank Uwe and Laszlo, who are here from FEPS, and Irek Bil from Amicus Europae, to thank for this partnership and that we can take part in this event. We have heard a lot of speeches and a lot of the crucial buzzwords and topics for the issue of peace, prosperity, and also defense. The topic of our first panel have been mentioned, and now we want to enter into dialogue here on the stage. There have also been some changes, and there will also be some video statements. I will explain this later, and you will see that the Polish presence in this panel has also become stronger, and maybe this is also a signal to receive from this conference that Poland is taking the center stage also on this topic, not only with the EU Council presidency. But before we start, and we will here join on the stage, I would like to hand over for the keynote introduction to Marek Belka. We have just found out that the right way to put it is that he has been Prime Minister of Poland from day one on, when Poland joined the European Union just 21 years ago in May 2004. Before that, he has been Minister of Finance in two governments in Poland, and from 2010 to 2016, President of the National Bank. So maybe he can also help us to understand how we will finance this necessity to rearm Europe and get ready to defend. Marek Belka, please take the floor.
Well, this is not a propitious time for progressive narrative, for progressive agenda. Let's be frank. Just look at the discussion about immigration. Just think of how rarely do we discuss the Green Deal issues. Instead, the buzzwords are security or courage, as the Prime Minister Gawkowski mentioned properly in my opinion. The reason is obvious. Because there is an existential threat to Europe and to European unity. It's not just military, but it's also cyber attacks, hybrid attacks, and also a strategic objective of our eastern neighbor to derail the European integration. This is not just about Poland, Estonia, and Romania. This is also about all the countries in western parts of our continent. Russia does not shy away from financing extreme forces, separatist movements, invests in misinformation. This is all we have to face. When we talk about our response to those threats, we have in mind not only military effort, which is obvious and key, but also investment in modern technologies, in cyber defense, in education of our public, how to distinguish information from lies. This is the world we are in. Well, what is the main challenge for us? It's how to invest in our security, not undermining the values and the achievements that we have arrived at in the last few decades. How to reconcile military effort with welfare state, or at least the core of it. Well, we have to find intelligent ways to finance our military and, let's say, security effort, both on the European level, on the communitarian level, and on the national level. Let me start with what is easier, the national level. Those calls from other side of Atlantic Ocean that we should increase our expenditure on military 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know how much % of our GDP. We should not treat literally what this guy says. It's our own interest to increase the military expenditure to a realistic level. And when I say realistic, it means that we should not push countries, well, let me quote Portugal, Spain, as much as we are pushing Poland, Germany, the countries that are closer to where the threat is. As a matter of fact, let me also add a statement about my own country, the non-Euro country, Poland. The situation calls for fast membership of the Euro in Poland. The discussion about Euro is completely misguided. We are talking about price levels, theoretical issues that never materialized in the countries that joined the Euro and will not materialize in a country like Poland or Hungary or Czech Republic. But we oversee completely the costs of not being in the Euro. Number one, it's the instability of capital flows. And second, it's the cost of keeping our own national currency. Poles are sometimes told that we should be proud that our horrendously ballooning international reserves. 160 billion euro or something like this. This is complete nonsense. Those huge levels have been prescribed by economists for the countries that stick to fixed exchange rate regimes. But we are not. Zloty is a floating currency. We don't need such reserves. Those reserves are resources that we don't spend for any useful reason, just pile up heaps of gold or dollar-denominated instruments, basically for nothing. If we are talking about intelligent ways to finance our military effort, why don't we take up this issue? Now, let's turn to the European level. We have discussed the issue of Europe becoming a fiscal union at least for the last 15 years, since the global financial crisis. First steps have been made after the global financial crisis, after COVID-19, but still we treat this as a one-time event, worrying that it will undermine fiscal discipline. I am not the one, I'm an economist, former finance minister, and so on and so on. So I don't underplay fiscal discipline. But in the situation we are now facing, we have to have common pot of money. Of course, the solution is obvious. It's the common European debt. Common European debt means also a way to increase the international role of euro. And this is the right moment to eat into the dollar domain in this respect. Countries will start withdrawing from dollar-denominated assets. Here we are with our euro-denominated assets, backed by the euro, by the European Union, not by individual countries. This is something we should treat now with seriousness, really. The arguments against are weaker than ever. Okay, for those countries who cherish fiscal discipline, we should also give something. We should replace the current Stability and Growth Pact based on yearly limits of budget deficit into what everybody knows, it's the expenditure rules. Countries should be allowed to increase their public expenditures only at the rate of inflation, maybe if the fiscal space allows, with some additional limited percentage. This should be enough. It sounds, but it's quite sharp. Believe me, we have tried it in Poland, but it's effective. So this is a good moment to marry, to combine the necessary military effort with reform. This should not be very difficult for the social democratic part of the public, of the polity, European polity. It does not require a lot of pain. Some pain in some countries, especially in the eastern flank of European Union, may be indispensable. But also, the people in our sub-region will probably be easier to accept this. So, just to start a discussion. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite all the other participants of the first panel to join the stage while we see a video message of Tanja Fajon. Unfortunately, Tanja cannot be with us here today. I'm sure she would have loved to come to Warsaw. She was a member of European Parliament from 2009 to 2022 for a very long time. For a short time also president of the Socialni Demokrati, our comrades in Slovenia. And she is for 3 years now the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Slovenia. She has recorded a short video message instead of a keynote that she would like to have given here. And so we will see this message. And meanwhile, I would like to invite all the others to join us on stage for the first panel.
The European Union has been a beacon of peace and cooperation since its creation. As we strive for a more strategic union around defence, it is crucial to remember and to maintain this peace mission both within Europe and globally. With this thought, I say welcome to you, dear friends, to the 5th Call to Europe in Warsaw. I thank the organisers, together with colleagues from Nova Lewica, to give me the opportunity to address you via video message at the beginning of today's discussions. Preserving peace, freedom and well-being of our citizens remain top priorities for the progressives in Europe. While we continue to uphold the role of the EU as a peace actor, we should address the emerging challenges and the need to reshape our approach in security and defence. Internal challenges and external threats demand this from us. The EU needs to reassess its strategy for maintaining peace and enhancing its collective security, build on solidarity and shared solutions. Our defence strategy must be comprehensive, encompassing diplomatic work, the defence of a rules-based international order and respect for international law. We must reiterate our commitment to work in close collaboration within the United Nations and other international organisations. This is especially important in times when the principles of the UN Charter are increasingly disregarded. During Slovenia's presidency of the Security Council in September last year, we organised an open debate on leadership for peace. Slovenia believes the way forward is to revive the UN and its fundamental promise to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. We take pride in the UN's past achievements, especially the UN's legal framework, which enables the power of rules to replace the rule of power and work hard as a non-permanent member of the Security Council to uphold this. Investing in security also means supporting Ukraine's path to peace. The war in Ukraine, notwithstanding the possible end in sight, has been constantly gaining in complexity. The disastrous toll on civilian lives, the deliberate targeting of Ukrainian energy infrastructure and the ever-present risk of a nuclear accident. We advocate for a just peace based on the UN Charter and Ukraine's sovereignty with no rewards for Russia's aggression. We support engaging with the US in peace negotiations, urging Russia to demonstrate genuine readiness for peace. The progressive approach to European security is not just about arms. It is also and primarily about stability, welfare, cooperation and European cohesion. We cannot in any case compromise social and economic justice in the pursuit of our necessary goals in the field of defence, as they are not competing dimensions but mutually complementary. For example, dual-use technologies can benefit the economy and the well-being of citizens.
Thank you very much, Tanya, for your input. Now we will start the discussion here on the stage. I will introduce our guests to you when I ask them the first question, and then I will also like to give you the opportunity to participate in this discussion until 11 o'clock. We are very good with the time, so I hope we'll also have an opportunity to have at least one round of questions from the audience. Now I would like to start here on my right with Miapetra Kumpula-Natri. You arrived from Finland yesterday. You have been a member of European Parliament for 10 years, from 2014 until last year, 24. Now you're a member of the Parliament in Finland, of what you call the Grand Committee, which is the name for the Committee on European Affairs. I think a very good name for it. And you're also a member of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, PACE, and you were involved in a very important report on Ukraine for a just and lasting peace there. Finland has joined NATO just very recently, not even 2 years ago, in April 2023. But now, with Trump in office in the US, we have heard it in the speeches this morning already, there is much uncertainty, and the challenges for Europe are to be ready to defend itself. So how does this feel for the population and for the politics in Finland?
Thank you for the invitation, and I'm very, very happy to see this new Warsaw. I've never been to this high and seen this much of construction, so I really think that one day it will be something similar in Ukraine. So for Finnish people, the NATO membership was something very rapid. You may have heard that the spring in the population was supporting a NATO membership like 20% still in January, February. And then in May, when we were applying, it was over 80%. And in the parliament, 6 votes against out of 200. So it was a shift that happened when we together analyzed the situation, the security situation, that our neighbor, Russia, has taken down the mask and shows that they are aggressively ready to expand. And we have been listening to Putin's speeches before that he only speaks for his own audience. And then we saw that he's taking actions. So we had to make the reality check. And today we will wait some other countries to make the reality checks. And I'm very happy that the greetings we had from different parts, Irache from Spain, Katarina from Germany, Tanya from Slovenia, they have making this reality check, and they have also, not to change, but then taking this position surely. So when Finland joined, we were led by the Prime Minister Sanna Marin, who also said a couple of months before that it will not happen during my time, but then something happened, and it was the 24th of February that Ukraine was attacked, unprovoked. Or is it a provoking that you want to keep the democracy? Is it a provoke that you want to join the European Union of the democratic countries to build prosperity and economy and start having the internal markets, bind your nation to the values of democracy and solidarity? If this is provoking, what can we do? Are we provoking here, or this is unprovoked attack? So that's why we cannot really stay outside, but defend our values. And as you hinted in the question that yes, joining NATO was a purely military action, that we also want to be protected by the Article 5 if need be. And then we have also the DSA, the bilateral contract with the USA. I must say that still we have not heard any interruption on this military cooperation with NATO or USA. But we have seen many other challenges that I also want to embrace here. Our Google calendars are not mentioning the Women's International Day. Our algorithms are going down if you mention the human rights, abortion, and so. Just look at your own accounts. If you are far right, you suddenly have 10,000 likes and so's. And if you're a social democrat and you say that let's go for the equality march and talk about abortion rights, then you are reduced from 200 to 10 shows and likes. So this is already today happening. So we cannot forget this internal security, the democracy and technology and sovereignty. So I took this very tiny example, but this is where Europe was not wrong to make some regulation. Because this is where I see so much messages now that Europe is regulating too much, and that's why we are not competitiveness. I thought that we were some years late to make some legislation to prevent democracy, and that way also to be able to defend military. So US relation, military still okay, otherwise very challenging. So Europe has to have a stronger political will and keeping us together. And I will finish here. I don't see any other party to be so solidarity in the DNA of the parties than ours. So I should not see a conflict helping Ukraine now with the military assistance. I was there for the 3 days, the 3-year day. I was having the application on the missiles to land. And when I did my report in the PACE, in the Council of Europe, the one party said that they cannot support it because you mentioned investing on the military too much. But when you are in Kiev, you see less ammunition means that more missiles come through. And this is the human right number 1, that you are not killed. So we need these actions immediately, and Social Democratic should put it because this is the solidarity at its best at this moment. And then the second part of solidarity comes with the long-term, white paper and others. Now, unfortunately, if you look at the figures, countries closer to the border pay more to Ukraine and pay more to their own defense. So this is not really balanced, and then we really need to work on that one kind of solidarity as well.
Thank you, Mia Petra. So for the Finnish Social Democrats, this is not a debate that tears you apart. This strong support of European security and the mobilization of extra financial forces is something that you count as European solidarity, and your party stands behind completely.
Yes, and we are actually pushing the government of the far right included, the true Finns, who don't like Europe, who don't like solidarity, but they are still on board and they are very strongly supporting Ukraine. So that makes politics in Finland a little bit easier. And that comes from the history. When we have a real threat from outside, we are a so small nation that we unite us. So we are actually pushing the true Finns to show their support in Ukraine in the concrete terms. And that is not very easy, but we will do it.
Thank you very much. My next question will go to Laszlo Andor. He has been EU Commissioner for Labour and Social Affairs. That's really a hardcore social democratic issue, while for many social democrats around Europe, the financing of the military is not traditionally a hard-felt issue, but like a hardcore issue, but labour and social affairs are much more closer to us. And we have heard the sense of urgency, Krzysztof Gawkowski has also pointed to it, and the existential threat we are facing, and that social democrats also around Europe are understanding this and pushing for this. But still, there is a danger of a competition between spending for welfare state and spending for the military. Tanja Fajon, in her statement, I'd like to quote her, said, "The progressive approach to security is not just about arms, but also and primarily about stability, welfare, cooperation and cohesion. And we should not understand this in competition, but as complementary efforts." And so I would like to ask Laszlo, as former Commissioner of the European Union and now Secretary General of FEPS, how can we avoid a debate of guns versus butter in our societies?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be part of this discussion. I think this is really a crucial one at this time. And indeed, I would just like to say I very much agree with Tanja Fajon, but I think the answer lies with what Marek Belka also explained already in the keynote, to connect the social questions with the economic one, and also to clarify that when we speak about defense, it's not only a defense of territory, but also the defense of political values and the social standards, which we as Europeans have established and would like to uphold also at the time of this increased external threat. Also to clarify that the external threat is not purely the military behavior of Russia, which we have been witnessing in the last 3 years, but also the withdrawal of the United States from the multilateral system, and a lot of things which multilateralism has represented, including international law. And this indeed is also threatening the pillars on which the European integration has been built, because the EU has been committed to a rules-based system inside but also outside. And upholding it on the outside is as much a European interest as preserving our system internally. There are 3 aspects which will solve this dilemma, because it's a dilemma how to move ahead with social policy at the time of security threats. The number 1 point, perhaps the easiest, borrowing. Marek Belka explained that just like Germany is making this enormous move, which is fantastic, and we have to give reassurance to the German friends that they are doing the right thing when they eliminate the barriers of public borrowing. But this needs to be done for a dual purpose, partly military, but also civilian, to create more public goods and ensure that a lot of investment which should have been done in the past decade or decades is also coming forward. And then the social and economic fabric of Germany is strengthened, benefiting also the rest of Europe. So borrowing is critical. Marek Belka explained that as the European fiscal rules are at the moment, it almost prohibits the military effort. So we also have to revise. It was revised 1 year ago, but we have to revise again in the light of the new situation. The second point is to preserve cohesion. This country received something like 100 billion euro from the 7-year European budget for cohesion, agriculture, and a few other things. This is a massive support, and if the EU somehow puts cohesion policy at risk because of the new priorities, then there's going to be a political problem in the regions which are lagging behind or in the regions which are falling behind. And there are so many regions which are also falling behind in the relatively advanced countries of the European Union. So to preserve cohesion, perhaps even to improve it in the next MFF negotiations is going to be very important to uphold the economic prosperity in the less developed regions. And the third point is indeed to ensure that when we upgrade the European Union from the point of view of defense, we also upgrade it from economy and finance and social questions. Again, in the last 15 years, since the Great Crisis, there's a lot of talk about reforming the economic and monetary union, but not even the banking union was completed, and a few elements of fiscal union, fiscal stabilization were not brought forward in a systematic fashion. And like unemployment insurance, there have been smart solutions developed. This is the time to bring it forward. And then the leadership of the EU, von der Leyen and others, could give a signal that they are not only asking the Europeans to make a sacrifice for military efforts, if necessary, but also sharing the risks of this new world within the European Union and providing a safety net for the national welfare systems. This is what the European Union can do.
So Laszlo, if I understand you correctly with this stress on cohesion and solidarity and burden sharing in the Union, this is also to preserve unity in the EU and not to let others, or from the internal perspective, drive wedges into our cooperation in our Union.
You said it better than I did. Thank you.
Yes, but what I want to ask you also is, like, this internal threat. I mean, we perceive the external danger from the imperialist Russian aggression against Ukraine and not too far from here. And we perceive the danger of the United States destabilizing NATO and our security and the massive efforts we have to do. But also inside our societies, there are ruptures, and a more militarized societies in Europe might also provide even a more fertile breeding ground for right-wing populists and authoritarian tendencies. So how can we address this issue also with our organizations and cooperation amongst social democrats?
I would also take this back to the question of the cohesion, because if you look at geographically where the so-called right-wing populist parties flourished in different European countries, look at Germany, it's flourishing in the eastern parts especially, where the lack of cohesion has been a problem, and the stagnation and long-term unemployment never went away. In Poland, you had the PiS enormous support in parts where they believe that they don't participate in this fantastic prosperity of the capital city and the western part. The same in Hungary, the same everywhere. So you have to ensure that economic growth is more robust, but also better shared, and more regions can participate. This is one key reason. And also don't forget that the AfD actually originates from the protest against the monetary union. And the way the monetary union was basically misorganized some time ago. And these necessary corrections could also diffuse pretty much. Plus you have the migration question, which of course is unrelated to some extent, but it's also related, because why did Europe experience these enormous migration waves, which eventually became extremely costly? Because in certain wars, especially initiated by the United States, functioning states were destroyed. And that created millions of refugees, which did not go to the United States, they came to Europe. And they caused the cost to Europe and also fueled xenophobia, and eventually the far-right populism. So this is also very important from the point of view of the strategic autonomy of Europe, to be able to better control what is happening in our neighborhood, and not to leave it to the United States, for which the costs will not come back, they only profit.
Thank you, Laszlo. Before I involve our two other participants from Poland in the discussion, I would like to ask back to Marek Belka. You have just mentioned the AfD in Germany, which was founded as a party to go back to the Deutschmark, that said, don't borrow money to Greece. Yeah, they are bound to lose it. It's a barrel without a bottom. And let's go back to national currency and more nationalist policy in Germany. They have become more radical and more extreme, but they still hold on to this thesis. Now, Marek Belka has put forward the proposition that Poland should, rather sooner than later, also join the Eurozone and introduce the euro. This is not a very popular topic here in the Polish debate. I think it was part of the party program for elections in 2023 of Nowa Lewica, but it was not really a big issue in the public debate. Now, you're bringing this forward now as a crucial moment, and if I understand, also as a way to strengthen our unity in Europe through this common currency in Poland.
Well, I understand that the discussion about euro is evolving. As far as the Euroland is concerned, there is virtually no government or no serious political party in Europe that is against the euro. I mean, if you are deep in the opposition, like Marine Le Pen or like Meloni some time ago, well, those ladies pronounced their doubt about the sense of euro. As long as they come nearer to power, they immediately lose enthusiasm for anti-euro rhetorics. Because the problem with euro is that we see all the weaknesses of euro. There are weaknesses, but this is one of the biggest achievements of the European project. As a matter of fact, this is why Trump hates Europe, because euro is a challenge to dollar. And this guy may not fully understand how important for the American economy is the international role of US dollar. The more accepted the American currency globally is, the less fiscal discipline is necessary for the internal policy in the US. Because the people will always borrow the money to the American Treasury. Why not taking over at least part of it in Europe? So the discussion outside of the Euroland, in the European Union, should be different. The potential problems for the less developed countries embracing euro didn't materialize at all. As a matter of fact, those newcomers are probably better off because they have more agile economies and more agile economic management, economic policy. Now we have to change the narrative about the euro. And I am proposing part of it. If we had more time, I would be able to elaborate on this.
Thank you, Marek Belka. And now to the two participants from Poland that joined this panel on short notice, but as I already introduced, it's also somehow the message that Poland is becoming much more important in this debate. This conference is called A Call to Europe, and this is a call to Europe. Is the existential threat we are perceiving that has been highlighted. And this conference is also an occasion to point to the EU Council presidency, which is happening in Poland right now. Half a year ago, we had a conference similar to this in Hungary, and so this is the lineup. So I will also want to ask you from the Polish side about the contribution Poland can make as part of this EU Council presidency. But first to Katarzyna Ueberhan, you are also concerned with hardcore social democratic topics. You are a member of parliament for Nowa Lewica in the Polish parliament, and the chairperson for the Social Affairs Committee. So first, I would also like to ask you, how do you perceive this debate or the danger of a debate of guns versus butter? How much money is there left for our hardcore social democratic topics, which are also important for the unities in our societies when military spending is exceeding 4% of GDP, as it is in Poland?
Yes, thank you for having me here, for inviting me to this event. I'm very honored. And going back to your question, that's very important to not forget when while we are spending so much on militarization, we have to remember that security, it's not only about guns and army. The security is the main focus should be on people, and people are the center of the measures and all the actions we are taking. As a social affairs committee chair, those topics and those issues are very highly important for me. I do think, and I'm convinced that we don't have to. I mean, while we are increasing our spending on militarization, we don't have to cut our spendings on on the social security, because as it was mentioned here before, the security has a different dimensions, and one of the dimensions is, of course, social security. It could be also health security that wasn't even mentioned here today, but. If you want to become strong and unite, and if you want to be a strong leader, because I think this is in the hard times, what is expected from us is that we will lead, and we will with the certainty and the actions. Because you are saying that when we are saying a wake up, that's the wake up call. In my opinion, it's too late for waking up. It's a time for taking an actions. And as responsible leaders, we have to provide the security that has different dimensions. And also, as I was saying, it's a social security, it's a housing security, it's putting the people in the center. And to be honest, I do not agree with thinking and with saying that we have to, because of the hard times, because of the war at our borders, that we have to suspend our social agenda. I don't agree with that. And I don't agree that we have to suspend being human. And that's what makes us human. Saying the human rights and this what our government is doing. I personally disagree with that. It's like suspending the right to asylum, because the hard time and even the times of war, it's not an excuse to suspend human rights.
Thank you.
And social rights.
Thank you, Katarzyna. We'll come back to this, but I would also like to introduce Andrzej Szejna here on my left. He has been a member of European Parliament as well as many that have spoken here, 2004 to 2009. You have been a member of the Polish Parliament the same since 2019. You're vice president of our partner party of Nowa Lewica, vice president also of PES, international secretary, and now most importantly, the Secretary of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Poland. Now, security in all its aspects, from social to healthcare and food and all kinds of securities, has been the title for this EU Council presidency in Poland. That didn't take a lot of creativity to think of this in these times, but they declinate this through all the aspects. But on the top of the agenda is the foreign and security policy and the security in hard terms, also in defense. So I would like to ask you, Andrzej, what is the Polish contribution now to this European debate that we have to get ready to defend ourselves, maybe even without the support of the United States in this existential threat in Europe right now? What is the contribution of the EU Council presidency of Poland?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to strengthen and underline that in this difficult political situation, Poland's foreign policy is identifying following points, following priorities. First is maintaining transatlantic unity and cooperation, including the close political, military, and economic collaboration with the United States. It is very important that this situation is not changing our approach to transatlantic cooperation, and we are recognizing NATO and United States as a partner and priority idea. And of course, deepening European Union-NATO cooperation is also our objective. Second, the European Union member states must strengthen their defense readiness and take on greater responsibility. I think it's something new, not for Poland, but for many countries, that we have to take on greater responsibility for transatlantic security and our own security and our self-defense. Fair burden sharing. Sometimes I can say it's not a joke that Mr. President Donald Trump has pushed us to make more, to take care of ourselves. Second, this is not aimed, of course, against the United States, but it's a response to long-standing calls from Washington for Europe to take on more responsibility. And we are doing that. We are doing that, and the white book on defense, it's a response. And preserving the global order based on respect for international law. And Europe is a beneficiary of this order as evidenced by the community's economic success over several decades. And Poland is a perfect example of that success. So I think that what is our priority during our presidency is clear. We call it security Europe. Security in different dimensions. Of course, what hasn't been mentioned, I think, until now, is also energy security. What is, I think, as much important as military security, because it's not a security of the housing. It's also security of enterprises. It's security of our common market, and food security, and cybersecurity. It's all has been mentioned in our priorities as a Polish presidency, and of course, after we are the first in this institutional circle, let's say. And we want to propose some initiatives that then these initiatives will be continued by other countries that are together with us in this presidency. We are in a very difficult time, but we are very delicate. And our diplomacy, as you see, is very delicate with United States diplomacy. We really hope that during this year we will face the peace in Ukraine, the peace in Gaza, but it won't be easy. And peace, it sometimes doesn't mean that it's only about the peace. And the peace should be just and sustainable.
Thank you very much, Andrzej. I would like to ask Mia Petra here on my right again. Both of you have stressed that the United States and the cooperation in NATO are still working, and that this is not something that we have to face, that it is that this cooperation is broken yet. Yeah, this is what you said for your bilateral support between Finland and the United States, and also in NATO. And what we are building up in the EU is seen as complementary to this NATO cooperation. But what is your expectation from the European Union in Finland now? What kind of support do you expect us to build up in the EU on the financial level to be able to spend more, and also on this European solidarity?
We had the panel discussion on the TV on the topic with the 4 biggest parties, 2 MEPs, 2 former MEPs, and we were united that we need stronger Europe. But then going to the details, it's always the devil there. So I think there are 2 phases. Now we immediately need to do something that US is doing bad. It is to help Ukraine. And I was proud of the new Kaja Kallas, who really tried to build a European understanding that where Europe is unsecure partner for Ukraine and these days, that we could be a reliant partner. But unfortunately, Commission nowadays is consulting so much the member states that they are not brave enough to propose something that is functioning. So in the end, it was planned to replace something that US is shaky supporting, and we end up with the 2 million ammunition. Further 5 billion. We could not do more. And it was Commission who should really make something that is based on facts, what is needed. But now it's like consulting, and member states are not doing too much, so they don't even present something that which is really needed. So maybe political parties should be then stronger to say that this is really needed, and then the Bush Commission, and not to go country by country, maybe one idea. But then the longer term, the white paper 2030, yes, it says we will look at more carefully what kind of military mobility can be planned. And so it was very much something like we'll check later. And we have a feeling that we don't have time to make that slowly movements. So also I was very happy that the SND chair said that if something more rapid is happened here, it was said that we don't have time for making everything very slowly. We are the democracy also able to legislate and put money on the European level. So this is like something functioning already. So it's not set in the European Union role, the book, that you have to do this slowly. No, it doesn't say that. It said that you have to give the proposal from the Commission, the Council and Parliament, and they can act quicker because we have this democratic structure there. So this is what is needed now for also the building up the way towards more secure Europe in 2030. And also for the Niinistö paper, our former Prime Minister on the Resilient Europe, that will come next week, the proposal. So that is also in the internal way. So for us, the 800 billion, we see that maybe we are not needing the loans because still we get loans cheaper, but we are trying to make the true Finns also to look at this because they are very sensitive, like, okay, we cannot do the European loans or bonds or whatsoever. But I have to bring greetings from another European the Nordic countries who've been very strict on the austerity line. They have clearly said that, okay, something called bond is not anymore a taboo. So I think we are developing, but it might be called something else than last time to be able to fit in for the people to change. I also challenge as social democrats, if we, Laszlo, don't change everything, Europe is not developing. I heard a little bit too much of the everything that used to be before cohesion and this and that and that. We have to frame something new realities also. I think that we have to support the people, we have to support the social security, we have to support the development aid, we have to continue the all policies. But we cannot have that big budget. So then that's why I challenge Social Democrat to rethink the titles and names. We have to push the far right to put a little bit something acceptance. If they accept the military support, then that's stronger Europe. And we welcome that one. So this is what I wanted to bring also, that we changed a lot, changing Finland to join the NATO. We changed a lot to build a coalition to understand that we need urgent help for Ukraine. So this is something that we are progressives, so we should be able to do that. And when Commission is taking too little steps, like Irache said, it was too little. Now, next week, there should be big talks that this is what we suggest. Is it that we just said that Europe could have a Europe-owned big planes that we are lacking from the military to be able to transport? Does that come from the European socialists that this could be a European one, so you can borrow the European one and not the American one? So this kind of active calls, that could be the Airbus thing. It can bring more jobs for Europeans to work and build those. So this is what I wish to see, and then something that can land on the political realities, that we need some right-wing parties and left-wing parties and Greens and others to join. And I really carefully look at what is happening in Germany, because it looks good on that perspective. 500 billion. In Finland, the right-wing people only mention 500 billion for military. And then we are happy to add that, yes, 500 billion for society.
Thank you, Mia-Petra. Now, you have done a lot in Finland. You have changed, you have joined NATO, and you say there have to be changes also on the EU level and in the EU budget. And you have addressed Laszlo, and if I understand you correctly, you said, well, maybe we cannot afford all of this spending for social and welfare state anymore, but there has to be a new balance. So maybe Laszlo can react to this.
Yes, one point.
It's coming.
So in a way, we should not confuse military spending with fiscal stimulus, because what we speak about is not a fiscal stimulus, what is needed, but a structural shift. And the EU also needs to take part in this structural shift, but primarily it's for the member states to implement this structural shift. But if we are serious about a fiscal Zeitenwende at the European Union level, then we also have to question this stupid 1% ceiling of the EU budget, that the EU budget can only be 1% of the European GDP. I'm sorry, when the European Economic Community was only 9 countries, they already made a big study, the so-called McDougall report, which said if you are serious about economic and monetary union, something like 5 to 7% of the centralization of the European resources would be needed in an EU budget. If you also include defense, it would go to 10. Why? Because at that time, 3% was the standard on the military spending. So I think all these aspects would need to be considered. The EU to raise own resources is another issue, right? So we talk a lot about these questions, but when it comes to a new MFF proposal, it's back to the basics. And probably when later this year, I don't know if it happens during the Polish or the Danish presidencies, but if the Commission comes again with the new MFF outline, it should be bolder. It must be much bolder.
Thank you, Laszlo. Now, you have a long border with Russia. Poland has a border with Russia. There's a war going on in the neighbor country. And there are other countries in the Baltics region which are directly affected. But we must not forget there's also a danger further south in Romania. And we unfortunately do not have the representative from Romania here on the panel, but there is a video message from Victor Negrescu, which we will now hear and see. He was an MEP from 2014 to 2017, then he was Minister of European Affairs in Romania for a short time, now back in the European Parliament, Vice President even, and he will be able to address us. And this is also the moment for you in the audience to get ready to ask questions. I will be happy to collect some questions from the audience then, and then we will have to close this panel around 11 o'clock. So could we please see the message from Victor Negrescu? Yes, here he is.
First of all, I would like to thank FEPS for the kind invitation to address you today through this short video message. I would have loved to be in Poland, but unfortunately, as you probably know, the situation in my home country, Romania, is not so easy today. we are facing huge challenges due to foreign interference, but also due to the fact that the far right is promoting an active anti-democratic rhetoric in my home country. It happened in Poland, it happens now in Romania, it happens in different places in the world, and of course we have to recognize that the anti-democratic speeches are winning more and more support. Authoritarian leaders, far-right parties, they speak about the freedom of speech, but in reality they want to make sure that this will not be allowed in the future. But we need to react. And if we do not react, we will fail. This is what is happening today in Europe. I'm a little bit afraid that we do not have a proper reaction to tackle the challenges that we're currently facing. We are on the defensive. We are not coming up with new initiatives, with new proposals. We have to be bold. We have to be courageous. And I have to say it, I strongly believe that the social democratic movement is the only movement that can offer a proper reaction to what the far right is doing currently across the world. We need to show people that we can develop policies that are fit for them, that can improve people's lives. It's not about political rhetoric. It's not about winning votes. It is mainly and certainly about people. Let's speak to citizens. Let's be courageous. Let's fight the anti-democratic rhetoric and show people that there is a way forward. Hope will prevail. But in order for hope to prevail, we have to be certain that we also correspond to what we are defending. That indeed, when we stand for values, we are ready to, of course, also to promote those values in our daily lives. Politicians have a huge responsibility, but also the civil society has a responsibility to get actively involved in the process. Ignoring the debates, ignoring politics, saying that what is happening in politics will not touch us, it's, in my opinion, a wrong perspective. You have faced in Poland huge challenges in this regard. Governments that decided to change laws that seemed to be impossible to change before. They have an agenda against citizens, an agenda against tolerance, an agenda against women, an agenda against local authorities, an agenda against democracy, an agenda against freedom of speech. Their agenda is a negative one, based on false claims, without arguments and real solutions. And of course, we have to say it as loud as possible and show to people that when they vote, they are supposed to vote for the people that stand for them. I know in Poland, currently, of course, you are preparing for the presidential elections. And some people might look on TikTok or on other social media platforms, and they might like one of the candidates that from time to time goes to the gym or runs around in different cities or even helps people to rebuild their homes. We are also helping people rebuild their homes. But it's about more than that. It's about more than simply showing off. Those that show off usually do not want to do what they are presenting through their videos. We have to be consistent, but we also need to get out of the fancy rooms and the hotel events. I know, of course, those kind of actions need to be organized. They are crucial for the preparation of our actions. But after you finish this conference, go in the street, go meet people, write to them online, call them, react, speak to people. It's a fight. Of course, we didn't start the war. The far right has started the war against the future of our cities, the future of our countries, against the future of our political movement. I'm confident social democracy will prevail. Social democracy has fought against the fascists, has fought against the communists. This is what happened in my home country. Many former social democratic leaders were imprisoned by those extremist political movements. But we won. we survived, we revived, and we have shown to people that we have the policies that they expect from decision makers. So let's trust ourselves, let's work with our political foundations, let's, of course, listen to the civil society, listen to the academia, but act. And then, of course, we will certainly win. I'm confident you will succeed as well in Poland. You have my full support as Vice President of the European Parliament, but mainly as Vice President of the Party of European Socialists. If you need any help, I'm here. Of course, I couldn't be for this event with you, but I'm confident that we will meet again and we will continue our work together. Once more, congratulations to FEPS for organizing this conference. You play a key role, so we trust you that you know how to proceed from now on in making sure citizens will listen to us and will vote for social democracy in Poland and across Europe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor Negrescu, for this video statement. And now we have 10 minutes for some questions from the audience. So I would like you to use a microphone so our translators can hear you, and also those following us in the live stream can hear you. It would be good if you could briefly introduce yourselves, and then please ask a short question and leave some answer for our panelists, leave some time for them on the panel to answer. So please.
Thank you very much. My name is Jakub Kozikowski. I'm from Warsaw School of Economics. And I wanted to ask you about the current change of topics when it comes to the politics, because we all see the great shift towards the safety. And I'm really worried about this shift because, as we know, the far-right populists in Europe are really good in talking about those topics, and it's a really big threat for the liberal democracy. And I want to ask you, the people who can change something about this, what is the plan to change the message, to address the change or this shift within our population, our citizens, how to address the democratic liberal values against the populists when it comes to war and the change in the EU and the US. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jakub. Rufus here in the second row.
Thank you very much. Good forenoon, everyone, or as we'd say in Prague, dobre dopoledne. I'm Rufus Kofton, I'm 20 years old, and currently I'm studying at Charles University in the Faculty of Arts. I had a quick question when we were talking about the common European debt. I was reminded, again, putting on this cap of a student of history at the Faculty of Arts, as an American, as an idealist, and as a federalist, both in terms of US history and in terms of the European Union. When Alexander Hamilton, a name we all, I assume, know, or at least have heard of, was the first Secretary of the Treasury in the 1790s, he proposed a common American debt, a national debt. He even had a quote, which I will try to briefly read. A national debt, if it is not excessive to us, will be a national blessing. Now, my question is, we all know how that ended up. The Federalists, although not becoming a political force, ended up forming what we now view as the US democracy, the way America works. My question is, could this potentially lead to a not directly federal European government, federal European state, but to much larger integration, even in terms of the political system in and of itself? Thank you.
Thank you, Rufus. We have room for a third question. But, oh yes, there it is.
Good morning. My name is Michał Orzełek. I'm an economist, graduated from Warsaw School of Economics, and I'd like to ask you about the euro currency. Euro was introduced in 1999. As we know, those times were pretty much different from what we now know as the global order. The banking system wasn't considered the real sphere of the economy. The economy was okay. Thanks. The banking system wasn't considered the real sphere of the economy. We considered banks to be just some facilitator. After 2008, it changed, and euro changed with it. So my question is it really a good idea to push this introduction of euro in Poland when we now face a very big spending, considering the military spending? We need a non-defaultable currency, And I think it's not a good idea to push this Euro topic when we face a very big threat from Russia. And especially, I would like to ask Professor Marek Belka to answer this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Michał. Thank you very much for the questions. I would like to hand the first one from Jakub to Katarzyna Überhahn about the threat to our liberal democracies and this increase in defense spending. Please.
I feel strongly that we should not change the message. I mean, we should change the way we tell the story, but we have to tell the same story. We should tell to be resilient to far right. We have to be strong with our social democratic values. We should still tell the same story, but just using sometimes different words. And it was repeated today many times today here that safety, security has different dimensions, and it's not only militarization. It's not only militarization, it's also security of our labor market, it's security of, it's also social security, it's health security. And for example, when I mentioned labor market with a reason, because we are very often, the far right is using, for example, the threat of the migrants. And we can tell the story and say that the migrants is also the safety for our labor market. In a situation when we don't have, we have the challenges with the demographics, when we have the labor market that needs hands to work. We have to tell the story about the qualified migrants that are also the way to keep our labor market safe. So that's why main message. We don't forget about our story. We can change narrative, but we cannot change the values and the issues that are important for social democracy. We just tell them different way, but we all the time telling the same way, and the same things. Okay.
Thank you, Katarzyna, very much. Now, there were two questions that concerned economy, fiscal policy, and the euro and reserve currencies. And I would like to hand back to Marek Belka, who has opened this panel with his keynote.
Okay. There are elements of questions in the most interventions. Number one, will my proposal lead to federation? Or well, let's use the term deeper integration, not to scare people. But sincerely, I would not mind. That's it. Come on, I mean, this is probably the best. I am a Polish patriot. I wouldn't even mind if you call me a Polish nationalist. The European Union is the best thing that happened in the history of Poland in the last few centuries. Come on. There is nothing wrong in it for us. Only benefits. The deeper integration within the European Union is good for Poland. Punto. Second, well, your question is more nuanced. I'm calling for euro adoption in time when our fiscal policy is expensive, to be delicate. And at the same time, there is an opinion, deeply rooted opinion, both in the political elites, but also in the society, that there is no such thing as necessity of fiscal discipline. There is almost always money for everything. This started basically in 2008 with the global financial crisis, when somehow, well, everything that was engineered by the elites at that time was good, because we were at the threshold of global meltdown, a crisis that would surpass the Great Depression of the 20s, of the 30s, of the 20th century. But then some economists turned to that the money is costless, that interest rates will always be zero or close to zero. So basically, there is no limit to indebtedness. For people in the streets in Poland, this was translated into simple words. No money? Come on, there is always money. The government has money. So we have now a situation in which there is no need to think even about fiscal discipline, about political or about economic cost of military efforts, say. As a matter of fact, if I were in the government now, 2 months to the presidential election, I will probably be silent about the costs of military effort, which we have seen in the intervention of our colleague from the Polish Parliament. But this is not true, simply. One way or another, we'll have to introduce elements of fiscal discipline. The ruling theory in the Polish government is now that we'll grow out of the debt, of the excessive debt. It's possible when we spend money on investment that is increasing the potential rate of growth, long-term growth, but not when we spend this money on social policy. When we spend money on social policy, we are not growing out of the debt. We are getting into the hole even more. And this is, I'm talking now as an economist, not as a social democrat. But social democrats should be also economists. And now, directly to your question. Why do we talk about euro embracement in the time when we don't fulfill the criteria? Let me now be a little bit arrogant. And this comes from my experience in the government, also in the National Bank of Poland. Poland is so important politically for the euro that if we declare readiness to embrace euro, everybody will help us, one way or another. A red carpet will be rolled out for Poland. And believe me, I know it. I know it. It's not that I hope, I know it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marek Belka. No.
But we do not agree with this social policy part.
You have heard that we have been debating about defense policy, also about the debate of guns versus butter, and you have heard different opinions. I understand that Kasia wants to react to this. But we will have to close this panel very soon. But let me try to close off with pointing to one paper to bring more unity into the social democracy of the Nordics, of Germany and the Visegrad Group, and also the Baltic states. There has been an effort that many in this room have also been participating in. Uwe Optenhögel, Ireneo Spil, Katarzyna Überhahn and Andrzej Szejna have been part of this Shaping the Zeitenwende paper, where we have tried to outline the foundations for a social democratic line in Eastern, Central Eastern and Russia policy, and I would like to recommend this also as a foundation for this debate. You can see that this is an active debate inside social democracy, and before we close this panel, and I hand over to David Rinaldi for the next one on housing, I would like to give the floor for very, very brief final comments from Katarzyna Überhahn on this guns versus butter debate, and then from our guest from Finland, who has came furthest, and she will close then the debate with one comment on the societal changes. So Kasia, please, very briefly.
Smart social policies create skills, create jobs, jobs create income. Safe the labor market means a growing economy. This is why I don't agree with Mr. Balkan.
And now for the final contribution to Miapetra.
Is it on? Is it on? Just continue. Okay. Yes, it was like a rhetoric. How should we take the rhetoric in these days? So I think it's a good question that we don't have to make the rhetoric. We have to say, because far right went too far. And we have to show that. So many voters of the far right were thinking of the taxes. And look at America. Those who voted for Trump are sucked out now. They don't have a job anymore. Economy is like challenging. The women didn't know that they will be taken back to 100 years back. Women working for the Meta didn't know that their boss is actually a chauvinist. In Finland, there was the first ever march on equality. You don't normally see streets full in people. There were 12,000 women marching. And not because the Finnish government has shown really what they have been done, because they see the wave of American values coming here. So I think here you have shown that already, questioning on the abortion and so. Women are the minority, and have you ever seen a far-right party helping any topic for minority called women? Just send me an email. If you show me that, okay, here they helped women, or on this movement. I made this call already 8 years ago. I haven't received any. So they went too far, and we don't have to make rhetorics, we have to show it to people when they really saw their faces. So this is why I think the progressives live in the 2025 and not let them take us to the beginning of the 90s or something.
Okay, thank you, Miapetra. Thank you all for joining in this debate, and it will continue.
Szanowni Państwo, proszę zostać na miejscu.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay with us. We are not having coffee breaks. It's a rolling coffee break. If you need coffee or a snack, you're free to go downstairs anytime you wish, but we'll be starting on the next panel right now. I would like to ask Mr. Rinaldi to be at the ready and to come to the stage.
Thank you very much.
It's picture time. It's not yet break time.
Jeszcze nie przerwa, teraz robimy zdjęć.
Fix the problem of the European Union. We still have a couple of points to solve. Good morning, everybody. And I think we are slowly starting to shift from a very big and important topic. Wait a second, I'll call you. Very big and important topic to another big and important topic. You have been talking and addressing the crucial issue of external security for Poland and for the European Union. But of course, this is only part of our mission as Social Democrats. We cannot abandon the important fight of delivering on internal security for the Union. This is the moment in which, if we step up our efforts to build a stronger unity and protection vis-à-vis external threats, we also need to showcase leadership for the quality of life of our European people here at home. I have to ask you, as I am about to invite on stage the Deputy Minister for Economic Development and Technology, Tomasz Lewandowski, I have to ask all of you to calm down, have a seat, and bear with us 1 minute. We have an important topic to address, and a good introduction. I take the freedom to partly change the schedule to use the speech of Irene Tinagli that we have in a video message as a sort of introduction to this topic before giving the floor to the Deputy Minister, so the people will probably calm down and we will speak with less noise. As you know, as progressive forces, we have been able to push the housing issue at the forefront of local, national, and now European action. Now we are bound to have some, I would say, responsibility. But perhaps let me directly ask colleagues to plug in the video of the member of the European Parliament, Irene Tinagli. She has been the chair of the Economic Committee at the European Parliament, but now she's the chair of the freshly created Housing Committee. So even the European Parliament, not a lot of competences, but a clear priority. Irene Tinagli first as a sort of scene setting, and then we go to the leader of housing policy in this country, Tomasz Lewandowski.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this event, and apologies for not being able to be there with you, but I just would like to send you a little contribution on what are we doing in the European Parliament concerning the emergency, the housing crisis. So, as you know, we have created a new committee, a special committee on housing. And the idea of this committee is to be able to analyze, understand the problem all across Europe, because as of now we still don't have a clear picture of everything that is happening in the different member states. We have aggregate data, we have some statistics, we have some experiences of citizens that are telling us they cannot afford anymore, not only to buy but even to rent apartments and houses in certain areas and certain cities. But we need to understand more first. So we need more homogeneous data, we need to collect experiences, we need to understand the root causes of these problems, because of course behind the numbers there might be very different situations, very different problems that need to be understood. And then we need also to explore possible solutions to see what it's been done in certain places that has worked, that could work in other places as well. And finally, we have to identify what pieces of the solution can be delivered, can be provided for by the European Union. So in terms of, first of all, of course, financing, financial instruments, providing funds or guarantees or supporting the crowding of private investments with the specific financial instruments, involving all the stakeholders, not only banks, like European Bank for Investments, for example. So this is part of the possible solutions on which we will be working, so providing ideas on how to leverage existing and future European funds, but also trying to understand if there is something that we could or should do also in terms of regulation, because it's possible that certain aspects of the market are not working properly, and there might be the need to intervene, whether it is, I don't know, intervening, we will discuss, for example, if changing a little bit or making more flexibility in the state aid rules could provide better tools for governments and administrators, or, for example, internal market. So there are many different avenues of possible solutions. So the purpose of the committee is to explore them along with analyzing the problems. So we are at the very beginning, so any inputs is welcome, and so I hope that I'm sure that today you will provide interesting debate and possible inputs to this conversation.
So, as you've heard, we have a mandate to provide input for the European Parliament on this, and I'm extremely happy to have with us also Marit May, the head of delegation of the TDVDA to the S&D group. But first and foremost, let's invite on stage and on the podium Tomasz Lewandowski, Deputy Minister for Economic Development and Technology here in Poland. Dear Tomasz, I think we are in this magnificent location in which we can directly monitor the development of the housing sector in Poland. It is challenging. I know that you are already setting a new course of action. So basically from us, we have to learn inputs on the good things that have been done here in Poland, but also how you see the integration between the difficult nuts to crack, making the difference at the local, national, at European level in a coordinated fashion. You have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for this introduction. I would like to thank organizers. Thank you for giving us the space to share with you our experience, our reflections and thoughts about the situation right now and the situation where we want to be in 20 or 50 years, because this is the kind of a time perspective we've been talking about. Now, I was very happy to hear what Irene said, namely that the starting point to create programs and to assign various tools is the right situation diagnosis, and it will vary depending on the member state. And based on this particular diagnosis, we will be developing the right tools, financial tools and subsidies and organizational tools, which will allow us to improve the situation in terms of housing. So what I will try to do very briefly is to talk about this diagnosis, about where we are right now in Poland, and about the target group of our programs. I also want to mention how we want to improve the access to housing in Poland and what tools we want to use. So the situation is drastically different to the ones we had 25, 30 years ago. And basically you can see that in all EU member states. Now, when we discuss housing, we do not exclusively discuss homelessness, or at least it's not our main focus. and we do not link housing to social security. Given this drastic rise in the price of housing and monthly fees of having an apartment, well, we've been wondering and talking about this target group. So this diagnosis at various levels is very important for one simple reason. Well, you cannot have a good housing program from the level of the country for all the regions. It will not be effective if you do it that way. And I'm happy to hear from you about that, from our panelists. But I believe this is something that we can agree on. And if yes, then it seems clear that you also cannot have one solution for all the regions. And the reason for that is that the starting point is different, and conferences like this one are a perfect opportunity to talk also during breaks, as we had this discussion with the panelists today. For example, in Austria, this public quasi-housing resources are as high as 50%, and in Poland, it's 5%. So these are completely different priorities, different tools that can be applied to increase access. And also from the perspective of preparing European programs. In order for these programs to be effective, you have to bear that in mind. Now, in Poland, a vast majority of housing needs are met not through public housing, but private housing. No, most of these apartments are in a bad technical state, so you rather own an apartment. You do not rent it from the state. This causes a lot of problems. For example, in terms of flexibility. So older people have big apartments because this is what they had needed for a family of 5 or 6 people. And now in this big apartment, you have an elderly couple or even one person, and it's a huge problem. Firstly, because of the costs of living, you have a lot of fees for such a big apartment. But there is another reason for it, is that these are usually old apartments. And you have to pay a lot of fees, but also utilities. It costs you a lot to heat, to have to pay for the electrical energy. So in Poland, what we want to do first and foremost is to broaden this offer of public housing. The kind that will be stable, so that when you enter the housing market, you know you can live in this public apartment as long as you want to, even until the end of your life, that you have this stability. If you change your life plans, if you want to move to a different city, for example, to pursue their careers, they will be able to do. They will not be bound by having a mortgage or their own apartment in the specific cities. This is very important also for economic development and for life as such. Now, I asked one question in the beginning, and I hope our speakers will also mention that. Who will these programs be dedicated to? And 35% of all Polish families are in the so-called gap, which means they earn too much to qualify for public aid that is offered by local governments. They are a little bit too rich for that. Yes, they are too rich for that, but they are too poor for the private market. So they are too poor to get a mortgage, for example, for an apartment, but also they are too poor to rent Because if you have to spend 50% of your disposable income on renting your own place, well, if you are a young family, you cannot travel, or you do not have money for any cultural activities. It simply deprives you to some extent of this joy of life. And in this situation, it's doubtful whether they would be willing to have children, whether they would be willing to pursue any kind of activities. So it is my conviction is that we should address the needs of these people who are in this gap. Of course, we need to support this public housing, but there are over 4 million Polish families in Poland who can not afford it to function normally. How can we do that? Firstly, public renting, and then you can involve a number of public entities. And we're very happy that we have many cooperatives, over 3,600 such cooperatives, over 300 communal companies that are dedicated to social housing. And they offer help to these people who are in this gap, in this limbo. And what we lack are consistent programs, multi-annual programs of building constructing public housing. This is what we've been trying to do, and we've been successful to some extent because thanks to the left being in the Polish government, we will spend this year for social housing 2.5 billion housing and around 5 billion in total for housing as such. And this is the kind of an amount that we are not ashamed of. So constructing and building new apartments is one thing. And of course, it's quite spectacular if you have new blocks of apartments that are made available. But also, it's about using what we already have, both in the public and private sphere. So the left has been trying to build certain IT systems in order to get knowledge about these empty buildings that we have. Because in order to pursue this wise and consistent housing policy, you need to have this knowledge. Is it better in this particular region or city to build new houses or apartments, or to renovate the old ones and to pay, for example, part of the monthly rent, just to use the resources that we have? And we've also been trying to expand the agencies at the local level, social renting agencies. They are somewhere in between the public actor and the private entity, so they can take on this intermediary role. Thanks to using these agencies, you can get the monthly rent that will be lower than on the private market. So we need to have some synergy between these programs that have been announced by the European Commission. And you need that money to building new apartments, but also to use the existing ones, and also to supplementing this rental fee. And one more thing that I would like to raise: to what extent, well, at the level of the European Commission, maybe we could reflect on social housing being excluded from this state aid regime. Because these entities that I have just mentioned, active in the social housing, if these entities, if they want to apply for any grant from the local government, or if they want to get any real estate from the local government, they are treated like businesses, like enterprises which sell on the private market and which can potentially, tilt the balance on the private market. So there are many restrictions and many obligations in terms of conveying information, for example, the same ones that apply to the state aid. This makes the system very inflexible. And consequently, these entities or cooperatives that manage the whole area, they are not effective in terms of organization, economics, etc. So I believe that between the European Commission and the national authorities, this should also be a topic to discuss, and this will definitely improve the situation in terms of housing. And now, at the very end, I also would like to hear from you what you think about that. That goes for Poland, but also for other guests. Well, I would be very much interested to hear about the discussion on how we can, what is your experience maybe, what are your thoughts, how can we convince the society to this belief that ownership is not sacred, that if you own something, you have certain obligations, that the state, if you pursue this wise, progressive housing policy, you can, they can limit this right. They can impose taxes. If you have this idea that you don't want to rent an apartment, you keep it empty. Well, this is a question that we as a society as a whole need to answer in order to improve the accessibility of housing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Deputy Minister. It was a fascinating plan, and thanks also for bringing some input, clear and concrete, on what we can tell the European Commission and our colleagues in Brussels to keep the fight for an impactful and meaningful European plan on housing that delivers value at the local, at the national level. But this is the moment in which maybe we attempt to give some partial responses to your question as well. Thanks for you for ending your speech into a question for us. We try to respond collectively, and this is why collectively we will have this discussion with representatives from different places in Europe. I'm very glad to have such a fantastic panel, and I will need your help, of all of you, to clap your hands for each one of them, starting from State Secretary Michaela Schmidt, representative from the freshly elected government of Austria. So she has a member of the SPO Presidium. When we invited her, she was a member of the parliament. And now, thanks to successful negotiation, we are very happy to have you here as State Secretary for Housing, Art, Culture, and Media and Sport. Thanks a lot for bringing the Austrian experience. I'm also happy to invite on stage Krzysztof Kukucki, the president of Włocławek. Thank you. Please join us. Then we have with us Grzegorz Petruszuk, mayor of Bielany. Thank you, Gregor. Among other things, also you can. It's our somehow pride to have you as Person of the Year, Progressive Figure of the Year in 2023 for what you have done. Outstanding contribution on putting into practice the value of welcoming and solidarity vis-à-vis the Hungarian refugees. Thanks for that. Very happy to have here Marit Mai, MEP and chair of the Dutch delegation to the SD group. And last but not least is proximity, my geographical proximity. I'm Italian, and I invite on stage my counterpart on the other side of the Mediterranean, Mar Jiménez Carreté, that for the city of Barcelona, she's the Commissioner for European Affairs, and she's leading a big campaign, mayor campaign for housing. So, as you see, we have a lot of different countries represented, because this issue, someone on the right wing said, is not a European issue. Europe should not say anything on this because there are little competences, but it's a fundamental European issue because housing is a problem everywhere. And if it is a problem everywhere, it is a problem for the progressive family. It's a problem we have to solve. So, Michael, I give the floor to you directly with microphone number 6 for your first introduction.
Yeah, thank you. It's truly a pleasure to be here in my new capacity as State Secretary of Vice Chancellor Andreas Babler. And yeah, as you already know, we managed to form a coalition with the Austrian People's Party and the Liberal Party, and thus avoiding a government led by a far-right Chancellor, Herbert Kickl, and most importantly, forming a government with a strong social democratic signature. And I'm also happy to speak on the subject of affordable housing, because it has, in Austria, historically been an important part of our policy, but also because measures on affordable housing and rent control were top priorities in the coalition negotiations for the newly formed government. And we all know that during the inflation crisis, housing cost burden on households has increased significantly in many European countries, also in Austria, in recent years. And it has a major impact of the quality of life of our citizens. Affordable housing is in short supply, especially in the growing cities and regions. And the developments have brought housing policy back on the center of public debate, also in Austria, in the last years. And I think it's not just a question of whether governments should intervene, but also which instruments are best used to influence the housing market. For example, the provision of social housing, like we have in Vienna, the regulation of rents, like we did in the last days, or the promotion of home ownership, which is also an instrument we used in Austria in a lot of regions. And I think as Social Democrats, we have the need to find the right mix of instruments to provide affordable and good quality housing. And to illustrate these points, I would like to talk about the Austrian experience. In Austria, the average price of a new apartment is about 5,000 euro per square meter. In Italy, it's 2,000. In France, I think it's 4,500. So Austria comes out of top when it comes to the average price of buying a new home. But these are only average prices. So, and if you break the features down, you will see that although other countries have lower average prices, the difference between rural and urban areas are huge, and it's not the case in Austria. So newly financed flats in some major European cities cost considerably more than in Vienna. We have in Vienna, you pay about 6,000 euro per square meter, and it's about 7,000 in Barcelona, it's 8,000 in Amsterdam, and it's 10,000 in Munich, so it's double the price we have in Vienna. But looking at Vienna, our capital is a city of tenants. About 80% of all people in Vienna are renters. So the city has a strong tradition, more than 100 years, of social housing, dating back to the early days of the First Republic, and the tradition was maintained over the last 100 years. And as a result, almost 2/3 of the city population lives in social housing or in apartments owned by housing cooperatives, which are also subsidized by the city. We have the same situation a bit less in cities like Linz or Graz, where more than half of the people live in social housing. So I think that's one answer to the question you raised. In Austria, sozusagen, social housing goes in the middle class, and it's not just something for the low-income class. So I think you need to earn more than 6,000 euros to not contribute to the social housing program. And we also have in Vienna in Austria, a rent-regulated sector, mostly older buildings, so buildings that are older that are built before 1980. And that ensures affordable housing, of course, but I think it's also an important tool to avoid gentrification and the creation of marginalized areas. So we have achieved a good social mix in the whole city. And these systems keep average rents down to 10 euros per square meter. In Linz, it's about 11 euros. In Salzburg, it's a bit more, but still, it's not comparable to cities like London or Paris, where you have an average of 33 or 35 euros. So it's more than 3 times higher than in Vienna. However, in Austria, the situation as a whole was worse in the inflation crisis, as rents have risen by up to 25% in the last 4 years, contributing significantly to the inflation spiral we have in the last years. And for this reason, we had this priority of housing and rents in the negotiation for the new federal government. And on the 3rd day of the new government, the Council of Ministers took the first important decision on this matter, and we have introduced a rent freeze for 2025, which will save tenants about 140 million euros a year. As rents would have risen in April by, I think, 3 or 4%. And of course, the rent freeze makes life more affordable. And we will continue to freeze the rents in 2026, where rents will be allowed to increase by just 1% and 2% in the year 2027. And after that, we have a rent freeze 3% and half the inflation if it's higher than 3%. So we try to fix this problem with the inflation spiral we had in the last 3 years. To counter the trend in housing, we have a package of measures to support the construction sector in the next years. We have the goal to harmonize tenancy law that has been a problem in Austria since 20 years, and to improve legal certainty for tenants and landlords. And it is also agreed, that was the idea of the People Party, that we provide young people and families with financing options for the purchase of property. So that's also a goal. And generally to make the purchase of property easier and more efficient. We have a lot of other plans in the pipeline, but I think there's not enough time to go into detail. But I think there's one message I would like to give you as a final remark. Leaving the housing market to the private sector, I think, is not an effective strategy. And I think a good supply of a quality of housing is only possible with a long-term housing policy. It's nothing you can achieve in a short-term idea of 1 or 2 years. And I think all studies show this clear in black and white. And I think cities in Austria and Europe should develop a really good housing policy for the next 10, 20 years. And we are all called upon here to continue to do everything in our power to improve the situation for our citizens. Thank you very much.
In the spirit of keeping our interpreters entertained, let's switch and go with perhaps on the other side of the panel to President Kukuczki. We have heard quite a big message on the role of the state and the public sector and civil society as well as social economy into housing. Vis-à-vis the private sector profit-based approach. So maybe your point on this, and if you can as well in the negotiation, in the political talks, if you can also expand maybe on who are our adversaries here. So what are the difficulties politically in advancing a housing, a meaningful housing? What are the arguments? Who is actually running against us?
Deweloperzy I banki.
It's the construction sector and the banks. That's the adversary. That's who is in our way. Or maybe let me start on a different note. Poland is vastly different from Austria. It's quite different in many ways. Over the last 30 years, just over the last 30 years, we have been living in a country which there's a sort of dogma around this fairy tale being sold to people, telling them if you want safe housing, if you want housing safety, you need to go and buy a flat or a house on the private market. You need to pay a construction company. And if you don't have enough money, and most people don't have enough in cash to simply go and buy a flat, then you need to visit a bank, and of course the bank will give you a loan. In the end, you will pay twice as much for the flat because the loan itself costs the same as the flat. And that has been going on for the last 30 years in Poland. Very rarely were there any programs that were supposed to help people purchase, again, flats from construction companies. It was mostly banks who benefited from these programs. So if we're looking for an adversary today, an obstacle, it's certainly those entities that can lose out should any changes be introduced. In the most recent campaign in the run-up to the previous elections, there was just one community, the left, that had a different message than all the other parties. All the other parties, except for the left, were essentially trying to go for safe loans, 1.5%, 1%, 0%. The whole idea was for developers, for construction companies and banks to benefit. And that needs to be emphasized. The experience of the previous government, which introduced so-called safe loans at 2%, showed that housing became less accessible, in fact, to Poles. Housing prices simply exploded. They went up hugely, although that's not to be compared to a city like Vienna, obviously, at least where I live. But comparing the last 5 years, 10 years don't even qualify for a comparison. There have been gigantic shifts. And as a result, like Minister Lewandowski said, 35, even up to 40% of Polish families find themselves within a rental gap. Most of these families simply don't have a flat. And if they do, often the flat is not really suited to their needs. It's too small. Polish families have no way of changing this. But these opportunities are slowly appearing, and it's thanks to Minister Lewandowski. That needs to be emphasized. Last week, the Polish government gave its approval to a law that is supposed to change the situation in Poland. And that is very good news. In fact, it's so good if, like before the elections, aside from the left, of course, everybody was trying to help banks and developers. After this draft law gained the approval of the government, everybody wanted to take credit for this law, even though we had already given all those ideas prior to the parliamentary elections. So what will these changes be about? Essentially, we will be supporting local governments in building houses and flats to be rented cheaply, like you mentioned in Vienna. We want to have this all over the country. So for 30 years, local governments shied away from housing and housing policy. But right now, they are increasingly becoming aware that it's a very good way of implementing more policies, other policies. And I think this is very important. One important point, Europe is dying. Demographically, we're really dropping at a high speed. And of course, there's a formula to reverse this or to alleviate this problem, but we often trivialize it. In Poland in 2023, 111,000 citizens less were born than died. Last year, the gap was 150,000. So fewer babies born versus people dying. Moreover, 60% of young Poles of both sexes state that their main difficulty in making a decision to have a child is not having housing safety. So we need to be aware of demographics, of housing policy, of healthcare. We need to approach these areas as sort of mutually joined parts. Last year, I had the pleasure of taking part in a meeting in Liège where 20-something ministers responsible for housing met and talked about what to do at the EU level to make housing policy a priority, a main, one of the major topics in public debates. And there was vast agreement there that it's important. And just as we were able to build roads and highways across the EU, and right now we're transforming our railway lines, at least in Poland we aren't, but I think this is happening all over Europe as well. In the same fashion, we can start implementing programs to help people have accessible housing. Because your typical Kowalski or Smith or, you know, your typical European family doesn't have to own the place where they live. This need for ownership is artificial. It was created, fueled by banks and by construction companies. So, and I see this in Włocławek.
Under the previous mandate, we bought 1,500 apartments, and we really pushed the liberals to do that with us. And they were saying, come on, don't worry, no one will be willing to do that. Okay, we'll do that for you because it's impossible to govern with you, but it will not work. That's what they said. In the end, we finished the first stage, second, third, a few thousand apartments in a city like Włocławek, you know. So just to give you the picture, in 5 years in Poland, we should have 10,000 and what you had in Warsaw was 1,000, okay? It's not just to blame anyone. It's just to show you the scale of this investment in public housing in Włocławek. I know I'm running out of time, so I just want to say that I know we need this policy at the state levels because some funds need to be guaranteed. And local governments are really, really willing to start building houses. We have this fund in Poland. Before Lewandowski's reform, there was this ceiling of 1 billion annually. But Polish local governments submitted applications for the amount that was a few times higher, which shows that local governors, well, their mindset has changed significantly because they want to build this public housing for cheap rents for their citizens. Thank you.
President Kukucki, and thanks a lot for actually underlying the social and security value of housing in the face of family planning and general security of our people. Let me bring to the conversation the Netherlands and Spain, maybe with the same question to MEP May and to Commissioner Jiménez Carrete. Maybe we can start with you, MEP. Of course, both of you can respond on the different suggestions that we have heard. But I have a very easy question as well to address, to try to borrow your mind. We have been able to push housing at the top of the agenda locally, nationally, and at the European Union level. From our viewpoint at FEPS, now we have somehow 3 things to do. One, as the panel that we see here, we have to deliver. Secondly, we have to coordinate the local, the national, and the European way. And third, we have to transform this in real electoral support. Not only doing, but showcasing and getting people behind us, maybe more than we have been able to do in the recent past. The question is easy, how to do that?
Thank you for the very easy question. Thank you for the invitation. I think the answer is maybe, as you also know, not so simple. I look around here and I see the beautiful city of Warsaw and also all the buildings that are taking place here. But I also, when I was sitting here and listening to the first panel, I think there is such a big link between what was said in the first panel and what we are talking about right now. In the first panel, we were talking about national and European security, about international solidarity from the European perspective, from our constituents. And this solidarity can only take place if people have a feeling that their government is also there for them. And the top one worry that people in the Netherlands have right now is housing. And if constituents, if voters in the Netherlands, I think also in other countries, do not have a feeling that their government is delivering for them, their government is delivering for them for their housing, as the previous speaker said, younger people that want to maybe live on themselves, have a family, but feel that this is being distorted because the housing is not available, then the international solidarity is also difficult to come by. So I think we have to make that link and make sure that we also bring this there for our young people and for all the people in our society. Because we see that many people, I think 10 to 15% of the people pay more than 40% of their monthly income on housing, and this is rent or the interest on mortgage. Whereas actually we say in the Netherlands that it should be a maximum of 30%. So many more pay more than that maximum of 30%, and that's everyone. You know, it's your neighbor, it's maybe your child, it's someone you meet in the supermarket. Many people have this very big burden, and I think if we want to make sure that we take away this burden, we have to look at the problems in the housing market. And some of them have been mentioned by Vice Minister Schmid. Also, Deputy Minister Lewandowski had a very, I think, good introduction on some of those problems that we see. The main problem that we, from the European perspective, of course, have to look at is what can we do within the European Union. And we often approach the European Union as a market. So we also approach the housing problem as a market. And I think here is one of the main elements of the problem. It's the financialization of the housing market. The real estate companies are making lots of money, are making lots of, the way that they come into the housing market is not a social way, it's a way to make profit. It's a profit-making machine for them. And we also see, of course, there is this other problem, but I think Mar will talk about it more, about short-term rentals in the housing market. So if we look at what we can do from the European perspective, one of the problems that you addressed, Minister Lewandowski, was the state aid and the rules for state aid. This is something that is also an issue in the Netherlands when we start looking at building social housing. How can we do this? I think the second issue that is really very important is counteract on this financialization. Housing is too much of a market, and the housing stock is being sold to the highest bidder. It's being sold to the highest bidder outside of the Netherlands, outside of the European Union. Some individuals in the city of Amsterdam own more than 500 houses by themselves. And these are individuals just earning money. But what is behind it? This is also difficult. I think we need more transparency. Behind it are big investors from outside of the European Union that are using our market to earn money. So I think we need more transparency on that to make sure that we know who this final owner is and what the financial agreement is. But we also need more transparency on our rental agreements. so that the individual who signs the rent knows where this comes from and knows how the price is defined. How did you have, I think in Austria, this was a very good example, have a very good breakdown on what the increase of rent, for example, can be. In some of our countries in the European Union, we don't have that. And an owner can easily just put another 10 or 15% on the rent. We need to have more transparency on those rental agreements as well. And I think we need to have, maybe we started doing this in the Netherlands, to have a commission that works on rental disputes. So if there's a dispute between the owner and the person that rents the house, how can we make sure that this person also has the right, because if the owner has this big company behind him or her, that the right of the tenant is being respected. And I think finally one of the issues that we have to do, and we can try and do this also in the European Union, because it's something that is there in many of our countries and in many of our cities, is this abusive short-term rental, where people buy an apartment not to live in it, but to use it for, actually as a hotel, for tourism. So that's also something that it destroys the cohesion in the city. In some cities, in the city of Amsterdam, 1 in 9 apartments is owned by someone who wants to use it for short-term rental. I think we have comparable cities in Europe where this is happening. And this breaks down also our social cohesion. I think your words sounded so good, Vice Minister Schmid, when you said, when we want to find a solution for the housing market, we should not leave it to the private sector. Because the private sector is in it for their profit, often for the short-term profit. And we are in it because we want people to have a house, because let's not forget it, we haven't mentioned it yet, but housing and having a house, a roof over your head, is a human right. So let's make sure that not only these almost 1 million people in Europe that do not have a home, that are homeless, get a home, but also all those other people that are looking for a home with low or middle income insecurities get this roof over their head. Thank you very much.
It's working? Yeah. I would like to start thanking the organizers, FEPS, Everstiftung, Amicae Europe, Amicus Europae, for organizing this panel, because it has mentioned very little the social unrest till now. We are mentioning it here with this panel, but actually when we are discussing about security, if we have social unrest in our neighborhoods, and if we have people fed up of politicians or institutions, then we have a big threat. So it surprised me when we focus only, and I wouldn't say it because I'm Spanish, because I'm pretty aware of what's happening here, and I think I pretty understand what the threat from Russia and neglect, the indifference, let's say, of Trump means for Poland and for Polish people. I totally understand that you are scared. I would be scared as well. But at the same time, I understand that in our cities and towns, we have a big problem that it's undermining democracy and also the European project. Because a lot of people, it's feeling that the institutions or the European problem, it's not working for them. It doesn't bring solutions to them. So this is why we need to consider the social unrest and the housing problem when talking about prosperity and a secure Europe. Because, you know, we have reacted very fast from Trump decisions, the Putin, and so on. We have a huge plan to defend Europe, which is called ReArm, not Defense Europe or Sovereign Europe or whatever. But the housing plan won't be announced till the beginning of 2026, okay? So in our cities, we have a lot of citizens not able to rent a flat because there's a market failure, but we will delay and wait, because I understand that the European Union hasn't tackled this issue previously, till 2026 to address this. This is why from 15 cities of Europe, we have built up a coalition, an initiative, we call it Mayors for Housing. It started with discussions with the mayor of Barcelona, Rome, Bologna, and now we have 15 cities that had a meeting 3 weeks ago in Brussels with the Vice President of the Commission and also Teresa Rivera and also the Commissioner of Housing, because we understand this matters to our citizens and it's an urgent matter. So what we are doing is bringing to the Commission several solutions and proposals. In May, we will present these mayors an action plan with proposals because, you know, if 40% of income of our citizens is devoted to housing, this is also an economic problem because there is less liquidity to make the economy grow and work. And it's also affecting our basic services. Key workers are not able to live in our cities or to work in our cities. You know, Leta mentioned the right to stay. What is this in our Europe? And what we ask, let me say, in this coalition we have Warsaw, Budapest. Now Zagreb also join us. And one of the things that we are asking is to apply the exemption clause, the escape clause, the same way that will be applied to defense to housing. When we were discussing this, I asked my team to call Warsaw and the mayor of Warsaw. This is a coalition of different mayors, different parties across Europe: Amsterdam, Barcelona, Budapest, Rome, Bologna, Athens, 15 cities. I wanted to check if the mayor of Warsaw was comfortable with this, because I understand the reality, it's pretty different in the other part of the Pyrenees. And he agreed to include this demand to apply the escape clause to housing as it will be done to defense. It's one of the demands that we have. We also will present proposal programs, subsidies, loans, a regulation that gives stability to tenants, and also will ask for a fast-track funds directly for cities. I just will go very briefly what we have done in Barcelona. Obviously, Vienna is a unique example. Most cities in Europe, we have to struggle with this. What have we done? We have applied the price caps in our rentals. We have declared a tension zone, Barcelona and other cities. It means that the social function of housing is not respected. So we are putting these price caps. And I must say, in the last year, the prices have fallen 6.4%, which is good. It's a starting point, but it's not enough. We have announced as well that in 2028, there won't be any Airbnb apartment in Barcelona. 0. Why? Because Catalan law that was brought to the court by the EPP allows us, turns the Airbnb short-term rentals into economic activity in which you are giving economic license to the ones that are holding this economic activity. These economic licenses will have to be renewed in 2028, and our decision is to renew 0 licenses. So, just in 1 second, let's say, 10,000 units will be back to the market, will be back to the social function of housing. Just to have the numbers in mind, every year we build from the public sector, we aim to build 1,000 units, which means 10 years of building apartments, units of housing in Barcelona. What we are doing is, to sum up, it's to trying to guarantee with all our tools the social function of housing. And to end up, I don't want to extend a lot, for me it's very important, the narrative, I mentioned it yesterday, because we have to understand that this security is a complex issue, but we might have to make it in simple messages. And if these simple messages, we are only talking about arms, we are lost. It's not our frame. The right is stronger here. The far right is stronger here. And if we don't tackle the social unrest, the far right will win, and also Russia, because Russia is using the social unrest to feed the far right and to go against the European project. So we have to talk to our citizens. tell them that their problems matter to us, and these problems are the external threat, obviously, but also the internal threat that we have. If we understand that the cost of life increases, it's as important as is the external threat, I think we have a lot to say and a lot to win in our streets and with our fellow citizens. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Commissioner Jimenez Carrete. Now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Mayor Pietruchuk. From you, of course, as well, maybe a comment on the multi-level governance. So from the struggle at the municipality level in dealing with European funds, national laws, and international problems. And maybe also, I think you are very well placed to give your input on how to reconcile this approach to security that has to be both external and internal.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. So this is a very complex problem indeed. And our Polish reality differs from the reality in Western countries. You can see that on the example of what Minister Lewandowski said or Mayor Kukucki. So private investors and developers, they got all the private initiative 25 years ago. They have conquered the housing market. And it's the most profitable part of the Polish business. One of the previous speakers has mentioned that prices differ, that it's 5,000 euros per square meter in Vienna. Well, it's the same in my district, in Bielany, but we don't earn as much as citizens in Vienna. But it shows you how much you can earn on the housing market and how easy it is to get into the citizens' money. And Mr. Kukucki has said that it's mainly banks that earn on that. And this has very serious consequences for the whole of the country, because we've been facing what many politicians fail to notice, this demographic collapse, because we have 1.1 children a child per couple, so no replacement of generations, and it's very close to 1, so it's the worst case scenario for economic and social reasons.
Polska.
Because there are fewer and fewer Poles. And so right now, for instance, my neighborhood, my district, which has 150,000 residents in Warsaw, I have almost 50,000 seniors and only a dozen or so thousand children. It's becoming a very visible problem in the kindergartens, in the preschool care facilities. We used to have a couple of thousand. We currently have 1,000. Next year, we're bringing it down to, it's going to be 750. The preschool facilities are becoming empty, and we see this all across the country to different degrees. And the lack of affordable housing is one of the reasons why Poles don't want to have children. If we don't have children, the whole system of education will need to undergo a huge reform, because we won't need so many teachers, because there will be nobody to teach. And this all has economic consequences down the road. And Mr. Kukucki, Mr. Lewandowski, what they did, thanks to what they did for the first time in the last 20 years, we have a law that will give Poles affordable housing. If a young Pole is to pay 1 million zlotys for a 50-meter apartment in Warsaw, and then, do all the work inside as well, they will have to be repaying this loan for the next 40 years. They'll pay twice as much as what the apartment cost. Nobody will be able to get a loan if you're earning an average salary. And secondly, it's like a modern type of slavery, economic slavery. Because this person won't be able to make any radical changes to their lives, even in the professional arena, because at the back of their heads, they'll always be thinking, I need to pay my next monthly installment for the loan. And much of that installment will be interest. So it is a very smart but catastrophic way of stripping young Poles, taking away their opportunities. Looking at how Warsaw is changing, let me give you the example of the Śródmieście district. This is the center of town. Over the last 5 years, it lost 37,000 residents. It dropped below 100,000 residents, where several kindergartens have needed to wind down their operations. So say they have 30 or 40 children now. The facility had been built for 150 or 200. Those kindergartens will gradually be shut down because there are no children. And the flats in that district are mostly being rented out on a short-term basis through things like Airbnb to tourists. And here the Revenue Office recently announced that they will go and make sure how many flats operate like this in the center of Warsaw. Many flats are purchased by funds, and it's like these funds, these companies that rent the flats rather than private individuals, and that also takes away revenue from the state. So the flats are being bought out. Whereas Warsaw has 100,000 flats at its disposal, and we're not able to provide those to those in need. I have 6,000 flats, social flats in Bielany, and we're able to put 400 families in those flats per year. But we need the district to grow. We need more people to live there because we're losing residents.
I would have myself plenty of questions, but I think it would be fair to try to give you the option of ask questions, given that you have been listening for over 1 hour. I have a mic as well. We can pass it in case you have some burning question. Otherwise, I go with mine. But if you have something to raise, I think we can take up to 3 top.
Okay, my question is related to the private sector. Recently,
number of the mic? Number 6.
My question is related to the private sector. Recently, the UK has seen a sharp increase in American companies, trillion-dollar companies that have been buying a big share of living houses, like houses for living, usually used by poorer people. How can we make sure that this doesn't set a precedent for the rest of the European Union and Europe in general?
Thank you. Do we have another one? There's one. And then I have add one of mine, and then we go to you. 2 minutes each, max. So start planning on 2 minutes max.
Dzień dobry. Chciałbym zadać.
I have a question regarding short-term rentals. How can Europe and Poland deal with this? Because we keep hearing about this topic giving rise to very heated debates, like in Barcelona. And Polish city centers, where cities like Krakow, there are buildings in the center of Krakow where nobody lives on a permanent basis anymore because 100% of the flats are in Airbnb or on Booking.com. So what sort of legal solutions could be introduced on the European level or on the national level? Also, how do we revitalize city centers, like in Krakow and Florence and other cities across Europe? How do we restore these city centers to regular residents? Can we do this? Is it up to us? Or maybe what sort of effect would it have on the city's economy? Or maybe we should reconcile ourselves to the fact that city centers should only be for services and tourism rather than for regular residents. What sort of strategy should we adopt?
To the mix, a point on still housing, but at the same time, it's a social investment. In the vast majority of the study that we see now on the EU spending, we feature clearly the need to address students, student dorms, and retirement homes. So for the elderly and the students, do we have something specific to say, some additional measures? Because there's not only the market and social housing, perhaps we need some additional tools. Floor to you.
Okay. Maybe just begin from an economical point of view. You have to consider that the demand for housing is quite inelastic. And the older people get, the more inelastic it is. So there's just no way that you need to control the house prices via the supply side of the market, or you have to do price caps. I think there is no other possibility in the bigger picture. So that's the picture. Then there is the question how to make it, and I think there's a lot of different methods you can use. I think on the most effective way is to have a huge share of public housing, because that will drive all prices down. The price for newly financed, the price for ownership, everything is going down if you have a huge share of public housing. But if you don't have it, you need to make other methods in the short run. But I think the long-term goal must be this highly share of public housing. In the short term, we have we have strict rules in Austria concerning empty flats or concerning short-term rents. It's just not allowed. So if you buy something in the center or in the cities, you have to live in this flat for yourself. It's just not allowed to not live in it or to sell it for tourism. It's not that easy on a legal way, but that's the main goal, and I think we made it in Vienna, we made it in Salzburg, we made it in Graz, so I think there are ways to do it. And I think you need a tax on empty flats. So we don't do it on the federal level, because it makes no sense to tax an empty flat in a region where no one wants to live. But you have to give the local communities in the city the possibility to tax the empty flats in the cities. It's too low, so we have you need to know it's not. I would like to have a higher tax, but at least we have this tax possibility. It depends on the majors of the cities to set the tax.
Yes, thank you, and very good questions. I think Europe is not just there for legislation. One of the things, of course, we can do with legislation is make sure that these big investors are not investing in our homes. We just need to see how we organize that legislation. Second is, of course, that we can learn from each other. This is what we, within the Housing Committee in the European Parliament, also really want to do, and what our chair also said in the beginning, learn from the good examples of Vienna, of Austria, but also the good examples of Barcelona. And there's also this good example in my own hometown, The Hague, where exactly what you mentioned, Vice Minister Schmid, has been proposed and has also been passed through the local government. If you buy a house, you have to live there. So it's no longer possible to buy a second house and not live there. It was a lot of problem, but in the end, it passed. And I think this is something that we have to look at, because it also brings in your other groups, David. Of course, we need to work for students and young people, and also for the elderly. But there's many people who are no longer students, who are 28, 30. On average, a European has his first individual home, either rent or buy, when they are 28. This used to be much lower, and if it pushes up and up, it also becomes the social problem and the security problem that we mentioned. So, for example, in the European Social Fund, in the cohesion funds that we have within the European Union, there's possibilities to support young workers, working poor, or maybe female-headed households that have it very difficult to sustain. And with this specific policies also from the European Union, we can make sure that this other group of people is also being targeted. Sorry for speaking too fast for the interpreters, but I thought in the because of time it would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for giving me the microphone, despite the fact it's so late already. My name is Andreas Stadler. I'm the Austrian ambassador, and I'm here in the first place to assist State Secretary Michaela Schmidt, who you have just heard, and proudly hear what we are doing in Austria about housing. But I think I would like to congratulate here the organizers of this conference for choosing this venue, because I think the genius loci of it shows that there can be responsible construction. It has been done by an Austrian company called Karimpol, who still manages this house. And the owner, who lives here very often, has told me, I have actually organized already several receptions here, that these last floors were not necessary anymore for him to make a profit with the rental of the house. So he wanted to create an event space with 60-meter-high ceilings here and 36-meter-high ceilings there. So I think in terms of architecture, it's also a very inspiring place, and this is what I wanted to hint to. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. We continue with the max 2 minutes each reminder.
Króciutko, jeśli chodzi o
So very briefly, short-term rentals, as you know, we don't have legal solutions to cap it, to halt it right now. And it's a problem because city centers are dying out. People are moving out, like in Warsaw, Krakow, Gdańsk. These cities are currently facing a problem, like in Warsaw, for instance. We have a whole infrastructure. We have kindergartens, schools, medical facilities. All these places were built and are being maintained, but there are no residents. And this problem is going to grow from year to year. As for a related issue, young people who move to Warsaw, say to study, have a hard time renting a flat because the prices are very high, too high for them. And here, thankfully, the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, which is also headed by the left, they're going to be building dormitories next to universities, student residences. Those are very necessary. I have 3 universities in my district, and I would really like the students who live there in residence, I would like them to stay once they complete their studies, to stay there, to start a family, to spend their lives there. Right now, the problem is that very few of them will be able to afford a flat, or even their parents won't be able to afford a flat there, even if they take up a loan. That is an important problem that we need to grapple with, and I hope that the government, once this new law goes through, I hope the government continues this trend and will regulate and fix the Polish rental market that requires courage and strength.
About the different questions, for me, what it's key is to consider to go beyond the social housing concept, and now we have to talk about affordable housing. For me, this is key. It's different, you know, I know in Vienna, social housing, it's middle class, it's living in social housing, but with the angle from the whole European cities, we have to talk about affordable housing, and it includes youth, elderly, these students of 28, 30 years old that are not able to have a flat, an apartment. For me, this is key. About these buildings, apartments being bought by rich people. The Spanish government has announced that it will ban this kind of buy-ins, which I think it's very, very powerful, this signal. Just to remember, it's one of the only 3 governments with a prime minister in Europe, so it's important that we send these signals to our citizens. And I wouldn't say that we are resigned to, we accept to lose our city centers. I live in the city center, and I think that there are a wide range of regulations that we can implement. Capping prices, is it working? And it's not affecting the market. There are new contracts as well, but capping prices is, with these price caps, it's working to guarantee the social use of the function of housing. Regulations, like I mentioned with Airbnb, the EPP brought this law to the Constitutional Court, but the court said, beyond the private property, cities have a configuration that it's under threat with these short-term apartments and housing. It's to live in, not to make business with. So we have an opportunity with regulation, and also we have to build, create new units with being innovative. The public sector, communitarian alliances, communitarian and public initiatives, but also we have to build up a partnership with the private sector and just keep building and creating new units, or banning the short term and bringing new units to the market to fix this failure. But there are a lot of measures that can be implemented. So I would be optimistic. It will remain a fight with a lot of economic powers, a fight with big lobbies, Airbnb investing a lot of money in Brussels. But we need to persist and to fight for our citizens and for Europe at the end.
We are ready for the fight. President?
Okej, ja zacznę trochę przewrotnie z Grzegorzem.
And so I've known Grzegorz for a long time, but I will be very open about saying that I'm not that worried about flats being expensive in Warsaw, because people who come to study in Warsaw, well, there are bigger chances that they will come back and live in my town of Włocławek. So just on that note, I hope they will not leave and go abroad. Let me put it that way. But on a more serious note, and I have to say that I fully agree with the previous speakers. Of course, there are mechanisms that function in Europe. They do work, and sometimes you do not have to reinvent the wheel. You can just copy the solutions that work in Barcelona, as we've heard, for example, in terms of short term. This is what has been is implemented. You just have to be consistent. Let me just, I do not want to escape these questions, but I want to get back to what Minister Levan, to Prime Minister Gawkowski said, because it's our panel is part of a greater whole. So we've been talking about security in Europe, and Prime Minister mentioned this courage. And I would like to echo that, because I would like to say that I would like this left family not to only limit security to military solutions. We have to get back to our roots, we have to have a wider horizon, and we have to support these people who have work contracts. We have 15 million people in Poland like that, and it seems that they've been left to their own devices, these people who do not have permanent work contracts. We talk about big business, about small business, but we also have these people who have work contracts, and it is them, they are most interested in this accessible housing. It is them that are interested in free healthcare of good quality. What they want to have is to have this balance between private and professional life. And I think this is where the left community has a work to do, just to build this security and sense of security of an individual, not only in the military sense.
Thank you. So now it works like this. I have to ask you again one big favor. So when I give you the go, I need a 1 minute long round of applause. 1 minute long round of applause for two reasons. First reason is to thank our speaker, starting from Deputy Minister Lewandowski, State Secretary Smith, President Kuczynski, Mayor Pietryczuk, MEP Mai, and Commissioner Jimenez Carrete. That's the first reason for the round of applause. And then the other reason for the round of applause is to welcome on stage my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Ania Petricek. Šripek, sorry, that is Director of Studies, Director of Research and Training at FEPS, and Dr. Ania is also the mastermind of the conference that is gathering here today, so she does deserve a big round of applause. Dr. Šripek.
Dwa skrajne. Masz,